As we're coming up to a wrap of 2023, I wanted to go ahead and make this video to be a recap of what happened in 2023 and not really a projection of what I think is going to happen in 2024, but really a bigger picture of what I think is going to happen over the next several years in the housing market. I'm going to talk specifically about in Orange County, but I think that this is going to be in a lot of the more desirable places to live throughout the entire country. But we know Orange County better than just about anybody, so I'm going to talk about our local market the most. So let's start first of all by going over a recap of 2023. Before I dive in too far, my name is Christian Stubbs. I am a team leader here at Onyx Homes, and I make these videos to give you as much information as possible as far as what's going on in the marketplace. So let's dive right into it. So a recap of 2023 is we saw a year of higher interest rates than we've been used to for the last several years. You see all kinds of different articles that are, I don't know, maybe confusing, of record low interest rates or historically low interest rates, even as we're sitting in a 6, 7, or 8% interest rate environment. While that might be true if you zoom out far enough, my parents, when they bought their first home, had an 18.95% interest rate, which seems insane. But at the same point, in a savings account back then, you were getting 12% on the money you had sitting in the bank, which I don't know if we'll ever see that again. So my point is, interest rates are way higher than they have been for quite some time, and they increased dramatically. But 2023, if you look overall for the whole year, we really stayed right around that 6 to 6.5% range for most of the year. And towards the end, going into the winter season, we saw rates go from 6.5 to 8.5% very quickly. And what happened in the marketplace in those times was really interesting. So if you have not already, I'd recommend going back to the last market update that we did. It is this December 2023 market update, because there are some really interesting things that are happening at the very end of the year here. But I won't go into too much because we have a whole nother video talking about that. What I want to talk about is overall, we saw prices continue to chunk up month after month after month after month through almost the entire year in 2023. While that happened, interest rates stayed about the same. So what does this actually mean? Well, buyers, frankly, got used to the fact that rates are this high, and they're gonna have to, if they want to make a move, if they want to buy something, if they want to make that transition, they're just gonna have to deal with it. These are the new rates. And there was a lot of people who were sitting on the fence waiting for rates to come down or waiting for the housing market to crash in reference to pricing. None of those things happened. Rates actually went up, and so did prices. And this is something nobody, including myself, really said was gonna happen. A lot of people anticipated that we were at the absolute peak of buyer affordability, and it turns out we weren't. There was actually a lot more room to go. So recap of 2023, rates stayed about consistent and then spiked. Prices chunked up month over month over month after the end of last year, going down quite a bit. So we are back up to record prices at the end of 2023, and we have seen rates spike, and they're starting to come back down with the looming idea, or I should say looming threat, of interest rates coming down significantly, depending on how the beginning of 24 looks. That's overall as simple as I can make our 2023 wrap up. A pretty boring year overall in real estate. Even though there was a lot happening in the world, real estate prices chunked up and interest rates stayed about the same, spiked, and interest rate or prices still went up. Doesn't entirely make sense, but inventory is still low. Buyer demand is pretty much the same as inventory, meaning that we're staying very steady with these two things. So that's 23. Now let's talk about 24. This is gonna be a very interesting year in the marketplace. And I kind of alluded to this already. Buyers showed that they are willing to do more than a lot of people thought, including myself. You went back to the middle of 2022 and the market really turned, and we went from 4% interest rates to 6% interest rates. If you looked at what I was putting out, I was saying that we have hit the absolute peak of buyer affordability, which I also said the middle of last year as well too, and we saw peak pricing in about July. Well, the reality is we didn't. That was not the peak for pricing. Now let's be clear about one thing. When I am talking about buyer affordability, I am talking about the mass amount of people who are buying a home with a loan. So buyer affordability, contrary to what a lot of people like to think, not everybody's buying cash for these homes. Yes, about 25%, maybe 30% of home buyers right now are paying cash, but the vast majority of people are financing. And affordability does not come down to the purchase price. It really comes down to two things. It comes down to your down payment and your monthly payment. At the end of the day, those are really the only two things that matter. So when you look at buyers, let's use an example. For those of you that don't like numbers, I'm gonna give you a very simplified version of this at the end. So stick around if you don't like numbers. But I wanna illustrate this just to show how far buyers have already proven they're willing to go in this affordability, talking about down payment and payment. All right, so let's use an example of a prospective prospective home buyer, maybe this is you, that is buying the median priced home. And again, if you reference the last market update that we just put out, this is $1.1 million. As of December's market update, the median price in Orange County, $1.1 million. At about an 8% interest rate, let's just kind of use that because that's where we've been for the last few months. If you were putting 20% down, so this is the profile, is a buyer that's buying the median priced home, so right there in the middle, with, let's say, the interest rates we've had for the last couple of months, with 20% down, which isn't the normal, but let's just, for ease of payments calculation's sake, 20% down. This home buyer would have a payment, so their down payment would be 20% of 1.1, which is $220,000. Their payment, including principal, insurance, tax, all the fun stuff, would be about $7,500. So $220,000 down, $7,500. And that's 1.1 purchase price at an 8% rate. That's what this buyer is willing to purchase at. And these are real numbers. This is literally what happened last month, at least when I'm filming this right here at the end of 2023. So that is where a buyer is willing to pay on a down payment scale of $220 and a payment of $7,500. So that comes out to $1.1 million. These three numbers are extremely important in relation to that 8% rate. Maybe let's use a comparison up here. Well, we'll use this formula right up here. Now let's flip and say what happens when interest rates come down. I think most people are on the same page that it's not really if, it's when rates come down. And how far they come down is not entirely sure, but I'll be a little bit conservative and say rates came all the way down to 5%, which is what a lot of people that are sitting on the fence are really waiting for. So now knowing that buyer affordability is 20% down or 220 and $7,500 a month, what happens if the interest rate goes from 8 all the way down to 5%? Well, let me illustrate this for you. I've got this pulled up on my computer here. If you change out that 8% rate, kept it at 20% down, what gives us a $7,500 payment? It is a $1.45 million house, meaning that that same buyer, yes, your down payment's gonna go up a little bit, but that same buyer would be willing to down payment and payment pretty much stay the same, $350,000 higher than where we're currently at. Now again, I'm not saying this is gonna happen tomorrow, and I'm not saying prices are gonna go up $300,000 or $400,000 tomorrow. But like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, if we're talking about the future of housing, buyers have already demonstrated that they are willing to pay $7,500 a month and 20% down for that median home. Now, if the prices slide and interest rates come down for some unknown reason, sure, that could happen. But the reality is, if these buyers are willing to pay these payments now, if rates come down, what would stop them from just paying more to get back to that same payment? Now, this is at a 5% interest rate. There's a lot of people that think rates could come back down to 4, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. Now, if you take everything the same, that 20% down at a 4% interest rate instead of 5 or instead of 8, at 4, your $7,500 payment would put this house, the median home price, at $1.6 million. That is a $500,000 more than where we're at right now. And this is what buyers are really already paying. Yes, the down payment's more. It's quite a bit more if you're talking about 1.1 to 1.6, but at the same point, it's really not that far off. So this is what I'm sharing, is that buyer affordability, when we've been talking about this, and Redfin had an article, or I should say Redfin had a quote that said this was the worst year for buyer affordability in a very long time. So when we're looking at this, I hear that, I understand that, especially being in the position of a home buyer and working with a ton of clients that are going through this. But I'm also seeing at the other end of this, buyers have demonstrated that they are willing to go significantly higher in price as long as that payment and down payment stay about the same. So it's just something to look at as a leading into 2024. I hear a lot of people who are sitting on the fence and they're thinking, hey, I'm waiting for prices and rates to come down. Now, we said prices and rates won't both go up. It's gonna kind of teeter-totter, but that was assuming that we were at the max for buyer affordability, and obviously we were not. Maybe we are now, but we're not really sure. And frankly, there's no way to know for sure until it's already too late. So if you're sitting on the fence and that's what you're waiting for, just understand the psychology of most home buyers is down payment and payment. And as long as they can find something comfortable in that price, they are willing to pay it. Now, obviously I'm talking about home buying here, but I hope sellers have their ears perked up as to thinking, gosh, if I need to sell my home and I need to buy something, what is the strategy that makes the most sense? And whether you're buying, selling, or both in this type of environment, or frankly, this environment is not going away anytime soon, in my opinion. It is more important now than ever to make sure that you have a local expert advising you on what to do with your real estate. Buy, sell, invest, whatever it is that you're doing. There are so many moving pieces right now. We are talking to a lot of different people that have maybe not complex situations, but there's so many more things to consider in this totally changed market. So if you haven't done a transaction transaction in the last 18 months, I would highly recommend getting your expert involved way sooner than you think. Now, if you want to go and play with these numbers on your own, you're not quite ready to talk to a lender, you're not quite ready to talk to an agent yet, that's totally fine. On our website, socalhomesforsale.com, hover over the buyer tab up at the top, and there is a mortgage calculator there, also an affordability calculator. So you can go in and plug in these numbers and figure out at this price, at this payment, this rate, and really feel what your comfort zone is. Then I would recommend going to the search function and get your saved search set up to where you're getting updated when something that you said you'd like is hitting the market, you get price changes, and especially when those things close. If you're a year out, it is really important for you to understand the market. This is one of the best ways to do it. So go there, set up your saved search. If you have any questions, you want to reach out, you have all our information. Again, my name is Christian. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.